The metallic halls of the Nexus space station hummed with the usual mix of alien languages and footsteps. Tom Reed wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished repairing yet another climate control unit. Being one of the few humans aboard the massive station meant he got all the tough jobs in the difficult-to-reach places. Not that he minded. It kept him busy and paid well enough. He was about to pack up his tools when voices from the nearby conference room caught his attention. The door had been left slightly open, and the universal translators in the station's walls were working perfectly. These mining operations on Hellfire Moon are becoming impossible to maintain, a high-pitched voice said. Tom recognized it as belonging to Ambassador Gray, a tall, spindly alien with pale blue skin. We've lost 3 more excavators this cycle. Perhaps we should abandon the site, another voice suggested. The gravity alone makes it too dangerous for our workers. Tom couldn't help but lean closer. Hellfire Moon was famous, or rather, infamous, throughout the sector. Its surface was constantly pelted with acid rain, and its gravity was almost twice that of Earth. To most species in the galaxy, it was a death trap. To Tom, it sounded like home with a few extra challenges. The mineral deposits are too valuable to abandon, Ambassador Gray said. But I fear no species in the Federation has the physical capability to work there effectively. A quiet laugh escaped Tom's lips. He had grown up in the Australian outback, where everything tried to kill you daily. This moon didn't sound much worse. Is something amusing, human? Ambassador Gray's voice cut through the air. Tom realized he had been spotted through the gap in the door. Most people would have apologized and walked away. But Tom had just finished his shift, and the synthetic beer in his system gave him an extra dose of confidence. He stepped into the conference room, facing the group of alien diplomats. Actually, yes, Tom said, holding up his half-finished beer. I couldn't help but overhear your problem, and I think you're approaching it all wrong. The aliens stared at him with their various eyes and sensory organs. Ambassador Gray's thin lips curved into what passed for a smile in his species. Oh, and I suppose you primitive humans could do better. Tom took another sip of his beer. Give me a month on that moon. I'll not only survive, I'll improve your mining operations efficiency by at least double. The room erupted in alien laughter. Ambassador Gray raised his hand for silence. You can't be serious. The gravity alone would crush most species. The acid rain would eat through standard protection suits. The temperature swings would be nothing compared to a summer in Alice Springs. Tom interrupted. Look, I'm not just talking. I'm willing to bet on it. The ambassador's antenna twitched with interest. A bet? What could you possibly have to offer? Tom straightened up. He knew he might regret this, but the beer and his pride were doing the talking now. If I fail, I'll publicly admit that humans aren't ready for galactic civilization. I'll recommend that Earth withdraw its application to the Trade Federation. The room went silent. Even Ambassador Gray looked shocked. Earth had been trying to join the Trade Federation for years. It would mean access to advanced technology, trade routes, and protection. And if you succeed? Gray asked cautiously. Then you fast-track Earth's membership application. No more delays, no more excuses about us being too primitive. The alien diplomats huddled together, speaking in rapid whispers. Tom waited, taking another sip of his beer. He knew he had them. Their curiosity about humans would override their caution. Ambassador Gray turned back to him. Very well. We accept your bet, but you'll only be allowed to bring basic survival gear. No advanced Federation technology. Tom grinned. All I need is my suit, some basic tools, and a supply of beer. Beer? In a survival situation. Trust me, Ambassador. You haven't seen problem-solving until you've seen a human say, "Hold my beer," and get to work. As Tom left the conference room, messages were already flying across the galactic communication network. A human was going to attempt survival on Hellfire Moon. Betting pools started forming immediately. The odds were 1,000 to 1 against him. Tom finished his beer and smiled. He had some calls to make, and some preparation to do. Those aliens were about to learn why humans had thrived on their own death world for so long. Sometimes, the best technology was no technology at all, just good old human stubbornness and ingenuity. And maybe a few beers for inspiration. News of Tom's bet spread through the Nexus like wildfire. Within hours, the station's communication channels were buzzing with discussions about the crazy human who challenged the Galactic Council. The human section of the station was particularly active, with engineers and maintenance workers gathering to offer advice and support. "You're absolutely insane," said Mike, the station's head of human resources, as he paced around Tom's small quarters. "I should fire you right now for risking Earth's diplomatic relations." Tom was busy checking his environmental suit, making sure every seal was perfect. "Come on, boss. You know they've been looking down on us since day one. Someone had to show them what humans can really do." Mike stopped pacing and leaned against the wall. "And that someone had to be you, with a belly full of beer. Would you rather it was someone who overthought it?" Tom grinned as he tested the suit's joints. "Besides, I've looked at the data they gave us about Hellfire Moon. It's not that bad." "Not that bad. The gravity is 1.8 times Earth's. The acid rain can eat through their best materials. The temperature swings from boiling to freezing every local day. Sounds like working on an oil rig during monsoon season, just with extra steps." Tom pulled out a tablet showing his plans. "Look, I've already figured out some basics. The aliens are overthinking everything because they have fancy technology. Sometimes you need primitive solutions for primitive problems." Before Mike could argue further, Tom's tablet buzzed. The Galactic Council had approved his equipment list. It was shorter than what most aliens took for a casual spacewalk. One reinforced environmental suit, human design, basic repair tools, emergency rations, and a case of beer. They approved the beer. Mike asked, surprised. "Told them it was essential for human cognitive functions." Tom winked. "They're so convinced we're primitive, they actually believed it." The next day, the Nexus's main hangar was packed with aliens of all species. They came to watch the human either back down or begin his journey to certain doom. Camera drones hovered everywhere. The council had decided to broadcast this as entertainment. Ambassador Gray stood by the small shuttle that would take Tom to Hellfire Moon. "Last chance to withdraw, human. No one would blame you." Tom checked his suit one final time, and missed the chance to prove you all wrong. Not a chance. He looked at the small crowd of humans who had gathered to see him off. Most of them were trying not to smile. They knew exactly what he was planning. The ambassador's antenna twitched. "Very well. The rules are simple. Survive for 1 month and improve mining efficiency. You'll have an emergency beacon if you wish to surrender." He paused. "Though we doubt you'll survive long enough to use it." "One question," Tom said as he picked up his equipment bags. "Those mining machines you lost, they were fully automated, right?" "Of course. We would never risk organic operators in such conditions." Tom nodded, hiding his smile. That was exactly what he'd suspected. The aliens were so dependent on their technology that they'd forgotten the advantages of having a human in the loop. Sometimes you needed someone who could think on their feet and improvise. As Tom boarded the shuttle, he heard the betting pools being updated. The odds against him had grown even higher. He'd asked Mike to place a small bet on his success. The winnings would be enough to buy drinks for every human on the station for a year. The shuttle's alien pilot kept giving Tom strange looks during the short flight to Hellfire Moon. Finally, curiosity got the better of him. Why do this? Why risk your life? Tom looked out at the approaching moon, its surface scarred by failed mining operations. Because sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to tackle it head-on. And sometimes you need someone crazy enough to try what everyone else thinks is impossible. The pilot's translator took a moment to process this, and the beer helps with this crazy thinking. Let's just say it helps us stop overthinking things. Tom checked his suit's seals one last time as they began their descent. "Where I come from, Hold my beer isn't just a saying. It's the start of some of our greatest innovations. The shuttle broke through the moon's thick atmosphere, and Tom got his first real look at his home for the next month. Acid rain streaked past the windows, and the high gravity was already making the shuttle's engines work harder. Most would see a death trap. Tom saw a challenge. The acid rain hammered against Tom's environmental suit as he made his way from the shuttle to the abandoned mining station. Each step felt like he was carrying an extra person on his back. The high gravity wasn't joking around. But after 3 hours of work, he had turned one of the small storage pods into a livable space. Status update. The alien monitoring station chirped through his comm. Are you still functional, human Tom? Tom wiped the condensation from his suit's visor. Doing just fine. Though I could use a beer break. He checked his shelter's seals one more time before removing his helmet. The aliens had been calling every hour, clearly expecting him to give up or die. Inside his makeshift home, Tom cracked open a cold one and studied the mining operations schematics. The aliens had been using fully automated mining robots, each one costing more than what he'd earned in 10 years. The acid rain kept corroding their sensitive parts, and the gravity played havoc with their stabilizers. No wonder they kept losing them. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways, Tom muttered, pulling out his tools. He'd noticed something during his walk from the shuttle. The moon's surface wasn't uniformly hard. The acid rain had created patterns of harder and softer rock. The next morning, Tom began his work. The aliens watched through camera drones as he dragged pieces of broken mining robots to his shelter. They seemed confused when he started taking them apart, salvaging the simplest mechanical parts while discarding the complex electronics. What is the human doing? One alien observer asked another on the public broadcast channel. Those parts are worthless without their control systems. Tom just smiled as he worked. By the end of the first day, he had built something that would make any engineer back on Earth proud. A simple mechanical drill that used counterweights to offset the gravity. The aliens were baffled when he started testing it. That primitive device can't possibly work. Ambassador Gray's voice came through the comm. Our best mining engineers designed those robots. Yeah, but did your engineers ever get their hands dirty? Tom asked, adjusting the counterweight system. Sometimes you need to feel the rock to know how to break it. To demonstrate, Tom pointed out how the acid rain had created natural stress lines in the rock face. His simple drill might be slower than their robots, but it followed these lines perfectly, requiring far less force and energy. By the end of his first week, he had extracted more ore than 3 of their robots combined. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. During his 10th day, a particularly nasty acid storm rolled in. Tom was checking his equipment when he noticed the rain was eating through his drill's outer casing faster than expected. He ran some quick calculations. The storm was more acidic than anything in the briefing materials. Warning, the monitoring station announced. Storm acidity exceeds safety parameters. Recommend immediate evacuation to shelter. Tom looked at his drill, then at his shelter, then at his beer. A crazy idea formed in his mind. Hold my beer, he said to the camera drone, setting down his drink. The aliens watching the broadcast collectively held their breath. Using his suit's enhanced strength, Tom quickly stripped the protective coating from a piece of broken robot and mixed it with the remains of his beer. The result was a thick paste that he quickly spread over his drill's vulnerable parts. The alcohol in the beer helped the coating stick to the metal, while the minerals in the beer actually strengthened the mixture. Impossible, one of the alien engineers watching the broadcast muttered. He created a protective coating from a beverage. Tom worked through the storm, his improvised coating holding up surprisingly well. By the time the acid rain lessened, he had not only saved his equipment, but had also discovered something interesting. The stronger acid had exposed a new vein of valuable minerals. That evening, as he enjoyed another beer in his shelter, Tom could hear the alien observers arguing about his methods. They couldn't understand how such simple solutions could work when their advanced technology had failed. But that was exactly the point. Sometimes the simplest solution was the best one. 1 week down, Tom said to himself, marking off another day on his calendar. Let's see what other impossible things we can do. 2 weeks into his stay on Hellfire Moon, Tom had turned the failed mining site into something that would make any Earth construction crew proud. The aliens watching through their broadcast feeds couldn't believe their eyes as the crazy humans' primitive methods kept working, day after day. Look at this, Tom said to the camera drone, pointing at the mining tunnel he created. Your robots were trying to cut straight through the rock. But see these natural lines. The moon's daily temperature changes create stress patterns. Follow these, and the rock practically breaks itself. The alien engineers watching the broadcast muttered among themselves. Some had started taking notes on Tom's methods, while others insisted it was just luck. But they couldn't argue with the results. The ore extraction rate had already tripled. One morning, as Tom was setting up for another day's work, he noticed something unexpected. A small group of alien miners had gathered at the edge of his worksite. They were from a species that could handle higher gravity, though they still struggled with the acid rain. Their boss had sent them to observe the humans' methods up close. You want to learn? Tom asked through their environmental suits' communication systems. Well, first things first. He handed each of them a beer from his dwindling supply. Consider this your first lesson in human engineering. The aliens were confused but accepted the drinks. Tom spent the next few hours showing them how to read the rock face, how to spot the natural breaking points, and how to use the moon's harsh conditions to their advantage. The aliens were surprisingly quick learners once they stopped relying purely on their advanced sensors. But our mining computers say this method is inefficient, one of the aliens said, studying the simple mechanical drill Tom had built. Tom laughed. Sometimes computers can't see the forest for the trees. Watch this. He positioned the drill at what looked like a random spot and started it up. The drill bit followed a natural crack in the rock, and within minutes, a large section of valuable ore came loose with minimal energy used. The alien miners were amazed. They had been fighting against the moon's conditions, trying to force their technology to work in an environment it wasn't designed for. Tom was teaching them to work with the environment instead. As the day went on, more alien miners showed up to learn. Tom set up an impromptu classroom, using empty beer cans to demonstrate principles of leverage and mechanical advantage. The aliens were particularly fascinated by his explanation of how humans had built the pyramids without advanced technology. You mean your species moved rocks weighing tons without gravity nullifiers? One alien asked, incredulous. Sometimes the old ways work best, Tom replied, drawing diagrams in the moon dust. Your robots are amazing machines, but they're designed for perfect conditions. Out here, you need solutions that can adapt when things go wrong. The broadcast ratings were hitting new highs. Aliens across the galaxy were tuning in to watch this human teach primitive techniques that somehow worked better than their advanced technology. Some began calling it the beer class, as Tom always started his lessons by sharing a drink with his students. Ambassador Gray was not pleased. He had expected the human to fail spectacularly. Instead, Tom was not only succeeding but was also winning over the alien mining crew. Even worse, some of the Galactic Council members were starting to show interest in these primitive but effective methods. This is unacceptable, Gray announced over the comm system. These methods go against all our standard mining protocols. Tom took a sip of his beer before responding. You know what we humans say about standards. They're great until they aren't. Sometimes you need to think outside the box. As if to prove his point, Tom demonstrated how he'd modified some of the aliens' broken mining robots. By stripping away the complex computer systems and replacing them with simple mechanical controls, he created machines that could work in the harsh conditions. They weren't as precise as the originals, but they kept working no matter what the moon threw at them. By the end of the third week, Tom's mining operation had become a strange mix of human ingenuity and alien technology. The alien miners had started adding their own improvements to his designs, creating hybrid solutions that worked better than either approach alone. It was exactly the kind of cooperation that the Trade Federation was supposed to encourage. Everything was going smoothly until the worst acid storm of the season hit Hellfire Moon. Tom was in the middle of showing a group of alien miners how to properly brace a tunnel when the emergency alarms started blaring. The storm had formed faster than anyone expected, and it was far stronger than usual. All personnel, evacuate immediately, the automated warning system announced. Acid concentration exceeding all safety parameters. Tom looked at his alien students. Everyone back to the main shelter. Move. He helped them gather their equipment, making sure no one was left behind. The acid rain was already eating through the outer layer of their environmental suits. But as they reached the shelter, Tom noticed something wrong. The main power core, which kept their life support systems running, was making strange noises. The acid rain had found a weak spot in the shelter's roof and was dripping directly onto the core's cooling system. Core temperature critical, the computer announced. Shutdown imminent. Life support failure predicted in 15 minutes. The alien miners looked at Tom in panic. Without power, they'd lose air recycling, temperature control, and their communication system. The backup power would only last an hour at most. Can't we just shut it down and wait out the storm? One of the aliens asked. Tom shook his head. Storm this size could last days. We'd run out of air. He looked at the failing cooling system, then at his last 6 bottles of beer. A crazy idea formed in his mind. Everyone, I need your help, Tom said, grabbing his tools. And I'm really going to need you to trust me on this one. He held up a beer bottle. Time for some emergency human engineering. The aliens watched in confusion as Tom quickly explained his plan. It was crazy, dangerous, and completely against every safety protocol in the book. It was also their only chance. Hold my beer, Tom said, handing his drink to the nearest alien. Actually, hold all of them. We're going to need every drop. Working quickly, Tom stripped down the cooling system. The aliens helped, following his instructions, even though their training told them this couldn't possibly work. They rerouted pipes, modified pressure valves, and created an emergency cooling loop using parts from their environmental suits. The core temperature kept rising. Warning alarms blared. Sweat dripped down Tom's face as he worked, the high gravity making every movement a struggle. Now for the crazy part, Tom said. He took the beers back and started pouring them into his makeshift cooling system. The alcohol would lower the freezing point, while the water and other compounds would help carry heat away from the core. This is madness, one of the aliens said, using a recreational beverage as emergency coolant. Sometimes madness is exactly what you need, Tom replied, watching the temperature gauges carefully. For a moment, nothing happened. The core temperature kept climbing. Tom held his breath. Then, slowly, the temperature began to drop. The beer was working as coolant. It wasn't pretty, and it wouldn't last forever, but it would keep them alive until help arrived. The aliens stared in disbelief at their sensor readings. According to every technical manual they had, this shouldn't be possible, but it was working. Human Tom, one of them said, using the formal title they used when especially impressed. Your species' ability to improvise is disturbing, but impressive. Tom grinned as he made final adjustments to the system. On Earth, we learned pretty early that survival often means working with what you have, not what you wish you had. The storm raged on outside, but inside the shelter, something important had changed. The aliens were looking at Tom with new respect. They had just witnessed firsthand why humans had survived on their death world for so long. As they waited for the storm to pass, Tom used the time to teach them more about human-style problem-solving. He explained how humans had learned to see resources in everything, how they turned problems into solutions, and how sometimes the craziest ideas worked best in crazy situations. But how do you know when to try something so unusual? An alien asked. Tom smiled. That's what the beer is for. It helps us stop overthinking and start doing. Sometimes you need to shut off the part of your brain that says, "This is impossible," and just try anyway. The aliens nodded, beginning to understand. As the storm continued outside, they started sharing their own stories of problems they'd faced, and Tom helped them think of new ways to solve them. The emergency had turned into an impromptu masterclass in human ingenuity. News of Tom's beer-powered solution to the power core crisis spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The broadcast ratings hit record levels as aliens everywhere tuned in to see what the crazy human would do next. But not everyone was celebrating his success. Ambassador Gray arrived on Hellfire Moon with a team of Federation inspectors just as Tom was starting his final week. The ambassador's blue skin had turned almost white with anger as he stomped through the modified mining operation in his expensive environmental suit. "This is completely unacceptable," Gray announced, watching Tom's hybrid mining machines at work. "These modifications violate at least 15 Federation safety protocols, and using alcoholic beverages as emergency coolant. Outrageous." Tom wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished adjusting a drill. "With all due respect, Ambassador, the proof is in the numbers. We've quadrupled mining output, reduced equipment losses to near zero, and nobody's gotten hurt." The alien miners who had been learning from Tom gathered behind him. Their species leader, who Tom knew as Blue, their real name was unpronounceable, stepped forward. "Ambassador, we must speak in defense of human Tom's methods," Blue said. "His teachings have revolutionized our understanding of mining operations." Gray's antenna twitched in irritation. His primitive approaches go against centuries of developed technology. What's next? Should we abandon all our advancements and return to hitting rocks with sticks? Tom couldn't help but laugh. "You're missing the point, Ambassador. It's not about primitive versus advanced. It's about using the right tool for the job." He gestured to a nearby mining robot that he'd modified. "Your advanced sensors couldn't handle the acid rain, so we replaced them with simple pressure gauges. The robot still works, just differently." The Federation inspectors had been taking notes and measurements throughout this exchange. One of them, a species that looked like a walking plant, approached Gray. "Ambassador, our preliminary findings suggest that the humans' methods are surprisingly effective," the inspector said. "While unorthodox, his hybrid approach shows remarkable efficiency. The mining output data is impossible to argue with." Gray wasn't ready to give up. But the safety violations. Actually, another inspector interrupted. "We've found that the accident rate has dropped by 78% since the human modifications were implemented. The simplified systems are more reliable in these extreme conditions." Tom watched as the ambassador's face went through several interesting color changes. The alien miners behind him were trying not to show their amusement, but he could hear their breathing masks making sounds suspiciously like chuckles. Furthermore, the plant-like inspector continued, "Several other mining colonies have already requested information about these hybrid techniques. The potential economic benefits to the Federation could be substantial." Gray turned to Tom, his antenna now practically vibrating with frustration. "This isn't over, human. The Council will need to review all of this. Your bet specified improving mining efficiency, not completely changing our established methods." "Actually," Blue spoke up again, "the exact terms were to improve mining efficiency without any specifications about methods. Human Tom has more than fulfilled this requirement." The other alien miners voiced their agreement. They had come to respect Tom's practical approach to problems, and many had already started developing their own innovations based on his teachings. "Think about it this way, Ambassador," Tom said, pulling out his last beer from his cooler. "Your technology is amazing, but it's like using a laser to cut butter. Sometimes a simple knife works better." He opened the beer and took a sip. "The real advancement isn't in making things more complicated. It's in knowing when to keep things simple." The Federation inspectors were nodding in agreement. Even some of Gray's own staff looked convinced. The ambassador realized he was fighting a losing battle. "The Council will still need to review everything," Gray said stiffly. But I suppose your survival and improvements cannot be denied. Tom smiled and offered the ambassador his beer. Want to learn how we came up with some of these solutions? First lesson in human engineering starts with sharing a drink. Gray stared at the beer for a long moment, his antenna slowly relaxing. Finally, to everyone's surprise, he took it. Perhaps, the ambassador said slowly, there are some things about humans we still need to understand. The alien miners cheered, and Tom grinned. He had not only won his bet, he had started changing how the galaxy viewed human ingenuity. Sometimes, all it took was one person crazy enough to try the impossible, and enough beer to make it seem possible. 1 month after Tom first set foot on Hellfire Moon, the Nexus Station's main conference room was packed to capacity. Aliens of all species had gathered to witness the official presentation of the mining operations results to the Galactic Council. The betting pools had reached astronomical sums, and tension filled the air. Tom stood at the front of the room in his cleaned-up maintenance uniform, looking surprisingly calm for someone who had just spent a month in one of the galaxy's most hostile environments. Next to him, his alien mining students waited proudly to show off what they had learned. The council recognizes human Tom Reed, the chief counselor announced. Please present your findings. Tom stepped forward, carrying something that made Ambassador Gray's antenna twitch, a 6-pack of beer. He placed it on the presentation table alongside his technical reports. Honorable council members, Tom began, I could show you charts and data proving we quadrupled mining efficiency. I could explain how we reduced equipment losses to near zero, but instead, I'd like to show you something more important. He gestured to Blue and the other alien miners. One by one, they demonstrated the hybrid techniques they had developed under Tom's guidance. They showed how they had combined advanced alien technology with simple mechanical solutions, creating systems that worked better than either approach alone. The real success isn't in the numbers, Tom explained. It's in what we learned from each other. My human perspectives helped solve some problems, but my alien students here came up with improvements I never would have thought of. The council members watched in fascination as Blue demonstrated a new drilling technique that combined Tom's mechanical approach with their species' natural ability to sense mineral deposits. Another miner showed how they had adapted Tom's beer cooling solution into a more efficient temperature control system. As for the beer, Tom said, opening one and placing it on the table, it became more than just a drink. It became a symbol of what humans call thinking outside the box. Sometimes you need to step back from advanced solutions and look at problems with fresh eyes. The chief counselor leaned forward. And what would you say to those who claim your methods are too primitive for the Federation? Tom smiled. I'd say they're missing the point. The Federation is supposed to be about different species working together, sharing their strengths. Humans might be new to space travel, but we've spent thousands of years solving problems with limited resources. That's a strength, not a weakness. Ambassador Gray, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke up. I must admit, the results are impressive. Though your methods are unorthodox, they have proven effective. And he paused, his antenna twitching slightly. The beer is not entirely unpleasant. Laughter rippled through the room. The tension began to break as council members started asking questions, not just about the mining operation, but about human problem-solving in general. Tom and his alien students answered enthusiastically, sharing stories from their month of working together. Finally, the chief counselor raised a hand for silence. The council has reached a decision. Not only has human Tom Reed won his bet, but he has demonstrated exactly the kind of innovative thinking and cooperative spirit the Federation was founded to encourage. The room erupted in cheers. The human section of the audience was particularly loud, already calculating their betting winnings. Furthermore, the chief counselor continued, we are fast-tracking Earth's Federation membership application, as per the original bet. Additionally, we are establishing a new division within the Mining Guild, the Human Innovation Department. with Tom Reed as its first director. Tom blinked in surprise. He looked at his alien students, who were making their species equivalent of happy expressions. On one condition, Tom said, making everyone pause. He picked up the remaining beers and started passing them out to the council members. Everyone has to learn the proper human engineering tradition. The chief counselor looked at the beer in confusion. Which is? Tom grinned. When faced with an impossible problem, you say, "Hold my beer," and then prove it's not impossible after all. And so, in a moment that would be remembered in Federation history, the entire Galactic Council raised their beers in a toast to human ingenuity. From that day forward, "Hold my beer" became a phrase used across the galaxy, symbolizing the moment when someone was about to try something crazy enough to work. As for Tom, he went on to teach his methods to aliens across the Federation, always starting each lesson the same way, with a shared drink and the reminder that sometimes the best solutions come from the craziest ideas.